What's up, America? This is Kim and Neil with Geauga Firearms Academy. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to answer the question, does a safety lever make a gun safer? So let's get started. Before we begin, because we have a lot of newer shooters, they're saying, what are safety levers? So Neil, explain what they are.
So this lever right here, and you guys can probably very clearly hear that, and if you had your hand on this gun, you could very clearly feel that. That lever prevents the gun from going bang. Simplest terms there is.
And before the keyboard warriors come out of their mother's basements with their Cheeto fingers, yes, there are some guns that have to have a safety lever, just like the one we just showed now, the 1911. So let's talk about that.
So as Kim indicated, this is a 1911. By the way, first came into service in 1911. This is a single action only pistol. So the first thing we really have to understand is what a double action pistol is and what a single action pistol is. So this is, again, as I said, single action only. This gun is absolutely cleared out, good to go. Safety's back on, not that it matters because it's a clear gun. So what is the difference, Kim, between single action, and in this case single action only, and double action?
Very simply put, it's how many jobs the trigger has to do. And so in single action, all it has is one job, which is to release it. So when you press the trigger, the hammer releases. If this was a double action pistol, it would have two jobs, and that would be to cock the hammer and then to release it as you're pressing the trigger.
As you can see, since this is a single action only, if I have the hammer at rest here, this has a grip safety, which we'll talk about later. But as you can see here, if I press the trigger, even if there was a round in the chamber, the gun cannot fire because the hammer cannot cock itself. The gun doesn't have the capability because it is only a single action and it can simply release. That is all.
Now we get into why this gun in particular needs to have a safety lever. Why is that?
Okay, so again, going back to the fact that it is a single action only, that means that the only thing the trigger does is release. That also means that inherently the trigger is very light and very crisp, or very short as far as its take-up. So I'm going to show this on the camera the best that I can. And by the way, before we get into any arguments about 1911s versus the world, here's the bottom line. This is the best trigger in a gun, hands down, for a pistol. Every other manufacturer, I don't care who it is, that it makes a polymer striker fire gun by today's standards, is always chasing the feel of this trigger because it is incredible. So again, I have to press the trigger safety, or I'm sorry, the grip safety, so you'll see that. Bring the gun up here. There is almost no movement at all, just that little bit of take-up. That's it, literally. And as soon as we're there, and I'm going to take the safety off, we'll talk about that. Once I'm there, I just put a little bit of pressure. And that is as crisp and clean of a break as I've ever had, okay? And this is by no means any special match grade gun. This is a standard Springfield. Nothing really that fancy about it. But again, the metal on metal contact within the gun makes this just an incredible trigger. That said, this gun is a heavy beast. It is all metal, as you can see. And the weight of the gun alone, okay? Now, I'm going to make sure the safety is disengaged, which we would never do if this was loaded. But if I were to go ahead and place this into a holster, and there was to be any obstruction, dirt, clothing, whatever, something in my holster, and this trigger were to be pressed just by the weight of the gun, it will go bang. Before I could even feel that there's something in there, that gun's going to go bang. Obviously, a very unsafe condition to potentially be holstering a firearm. In the cocked position, in the single action position, which this gun could be fired in, I would have to engage the safety. Now that I've done that, even with the grip safety depressed, and I press the trigger, no matter what, that gun is not going to go bang in there if it's functioning properly as I place it in my holster.
Simply put, if you have a single action only pistol,
voila,
the only way to safely carry it or store it is to keep it cocked and locked. So you must have a safety lever on these types of pistols. Now let's move into other pistols. Some guns are sold with an option to have a safety lever. So let's talk about those.
So this is one of my favorite guns, and clearly one of Kim's, because this is Kim's gun actually. This is an M&P 9, and this is the 2.0 model. This gun is notorious for being sold both with and without a safety lever. Just so that we're on the same page, this safety lever, very similar, is placed on here. Now I'm going to bring this up to the camera. hopefully you will, and I'm going to point to it first where my finger is. Hopefully you're going to be able to see that there. There's the little takeout piece right there. Literally that is a loose piece that can be removed from the frame of the gun. So that piece, again, is removable. And it's removable because you can add that actual safety lever on there. Or you can buy it sold just the way it is. So you'll see this same gun, whether it's the 4.2 or this 5-inch or whatever size, 3.6, whatever model size you want, but they give you the option of having a safety. Now, why do they do this? It's not required on this particular type of gun because there's additional safeties already built into the gun. The main reason they do this is for the consumer. If the consumer sees a gun and buys, if I'm Smith & Wesson, for example, and I'm selling a variety of guns, and a consumer will buy a gun because they see a safety lever and assume it's safer, then they'll buy that gun. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have it on that gun. It's just an option of whether you feel more comfortable with or without it.
If it doesn't have a safety lever, are there any other safeties on the gun?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So first of all, this one, and I'll give you another example. This is a Springfield we have here on the table. You might be able to see a little bit better. This has a paddle safety on the trigger, where the Smith & Wesson, as we all know, some people really hate it, but it's a hinge trigger system. The purpose of this is that if I press the trigger and not in the right place, no matter how hard I press this trigger, it's locked into place. Mainly that if this were to fall onto the ground, we all know the SIG stories and whatnot, and the bottom line is inertia alone of that trigger being forced to the rear without actually being pressed properly, it cannot move to the rear. And that's a big point on what I'm going to show you next. So if this trigger does not go to the rear, if my finger is not properly placed on there, it will not move. Now, let's look at the internals, and we can do this pretty quickly right on screen. You're going to see in the back here, and I'm going to point to it, that's called the safety plunger right there, that silver circle. Now, what you probably won't be able to see on camera without getting really crazy, and I don't really think it matters, but this right back here, this is part of the striker. So this is what actually goes forward to hit the back of the primer to set the round off. That striker cannot move forward unless that plunger that I just showed you up close is depressed. So how does that happen? Well, right back here, and I'll just show you where my finger is. Doesn't matter how crystal clear that is. There's a little hump back here on the trigger bar. And when I move the trigger back and forth, that bar moves, and you will see that that trigger bar is aligned. Hang on, let me get a better angle here. That trigger bar is aligned where that plunger is. So unless that trigger is moved to the rear, which, first of all, can't happen unless I actually press that trigger properly. Even if I press it from the top or the sides, it's not going to work. If it were dropped that way, the trigger's not going to move back from inertia. Unless that is pressed in there, okay, then that striker cannot come forward. And now that I've pressed that, the striker's forward, and then you'll actually hear it click as it goes back in, and then I cannot press it again. So the only way that the striker can come forward is if the plunger's depressed and the trigger is pressed to the rear. Otherwise, we have no bang. And that's why we don't necessarily need a lever in addition to all these features.
So personally, Neil and I do not have any safety levers on our pistols except for the exceptions of the ones who need to have them, the single action only. All of our other pistols do not have them. Why? Because in my opinion and Neil's opinion, what makes a gun safe is you not pointing at things you do not want to destroy, and you keeping your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. The biggest issue I have is when people go to a shop and they're going to get their first gun, that you hear the word safety and they get excited. They're like, oh yeah, give me that gun. I want the safest gun there is. Now here's the issue and problem I have with that. When you're a new shooter, there's already so much that you're trying to learn. You know, you gotta work on your grip and aligning your sights and pressing the trigger smoothly, and there's all stance and all this stuff that you're trying to remember and you're trying to learn. And so there's a lot to learn. And now you're gonna add one more step, which is now you're gonna have a safety to engage. And the issue that a lot of people do is that they cheat themselves. They go to the range, they turn the safety off, they shoot, let's say, 100, 200 times. They turn the safety back on, and then they go home. So that whole trip to the range, they only engage the safety that one time. And Neil and I are really into self-defense.
Hold on. Let me break in for a second.
Sure.
So just so that we're all clear on what Kim's saying, think about this. You go to the range with this gun, right? You put your magazine in here. You're going to have to take the safety off the racket. Okay, so now you're at the range. It's safe. We're doing our deal. We hit our last round. Now the slide's locked open, right? Safety has no bearing on this whatsoever. We take that mag out, put a new one in. We load that one, still have not touched the safety, right? And so let's say we shot 200 rounds. Maybe we took the safety off when we first got there, and then maybe we put the safety on before we left. So out of 200 rounds, we put the safety on or off twice. And what we really taught ourselves was every time I pick this gun up and just press the trigger, it goes bang. But that's not reality.
Yes, because when it comes to real life, now your life's on the line, your family's life's on the line, you have adrenaline running. There's no way in the world that you're ever going to remember that safety lever if you're not practicing with it all the time. So I tell people, if you want to get a safety lever, great, but you need to commit to that using it all the time so it becomes second nature where you're not having to think about using it. Because if you're not, you're just cheating yourself, and it's more likely to get you killed than to keep you safe.
And I can't help myself. But if I were to choose this gun for my gun that I was going to carry or train with, what I would do is I would go to the range and I would take the safety off. I would do my shooting. I would not shoot until I'm back into slide lock. I would shoot a few rounds, re-engage the safety, set the gun down. Like, let's say you're at a range you can't holster and all that, great, or you haven't had training for that. And I pick the gun back up, safety off, do my shooting, back on, and so forth. So that each time I get used to running this gun without having to think about what I'm doing.
We showed it earlier in the video, but here we have a grip safety on the 1911. We also have a grip safety on our XDM, so same thing.
I don't have one on an M&P.
No, it doesn't. So what are grip safeties? Grip safeties are there, so unless it's compressed, even if the gun was fully loaded and ready to go, it would not go off. So this has to be compressed.
Safety lever, off. No grip safety, no bang. Grip safety, if there was a round in there, bang.
I don't have an issue with grip safeties because it's not anything you have to think about. You just pick up the gun, and I hope that you would have a grip on it if you were going to shoot it, and it's ready to go. So no extra thought, nothing extra you have to do. It's all ready to go as soon as you grip it. There is, however, one I have an issue with. And that's the new Smith & Wesson EZ. They do have a grip safety on it, and unlike the...
Wait, before you bash them, we're huge M&P fans.
We are. And I do like the concept of it. I understand. I think most people, they just don't teach women how to rack properly, and that's the biggest issue, but that's another video. However, they went with a different design. So instead of having this big, fat, very dominant style like this, and like the 1911 style like this, they went with a long, skinny, flat one. So it's like much longer and it's thin.
And it starts at the base of the grip,
yeah,
which is really the wonky part.
Really, the design of it's just poor. And the problem with that is during class, I'd say at least 80% of the students who bring that will have at least a few times when they're shooting and they're pressing the trigger and it's not going bang and they have to readjust their grip, which kind of scares me because, like, if that's going to be just a fun gun, or whatever, you're just shooting for sport, that's one thing. But you're going to bet your life on this gun and you're going to pull it out, and you could pull it out and then it doesn't work. I mean, that's... Even
though it's loaded and ready to go and functioning properly.
Yeah, and that's really scary. I mean, I want this gun to work no matter what. And like I keep mentioning, it's all easy when you're at the range, but now you're going to add stress in of a possible threat. And your hands are going to be shaking, and you're not going to probably get the perfect grip. And that's
number one thing for a gun to do is to go bang. We need to go bang when we need it to.
To sum it all up, there are guns that do need safety levers, such as the 1911 and other single action only pistols. Then there's other pistols that come optional. So if you want to have one, that's great, but don't cheat yourself. Make sure you practice all the time with it. Make it so it's not anything you have to think about or remember. Personally, like I said, we do not have them with any safety levers except for the ones that need them, because at the end of the day, what makes a gun really safe is you. You being smart, you not pointing at things you don't want to destroy, and you keeping your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. We hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, a like, a share, a comment. We always love to hear from you guys. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. Click the bell so you get notified every time we put a video out. We have, make sure you also follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. We have a Patreon where we put premium content. For every one video we put on YouTube, we also put a special video that is only on Patreon. Until next time, remember, it's always better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Come on, I know.
I like being closer to you.
Listen, it's just a strap. I swear on my life. Look it. You see?
Oh, okay.
Look. You're still in frame, like perfect.
I like to be closer
Yeah,
to you.
people are like, what's wrong with those people?
We're joined at the hip. I'm just kidding. I actually like my husband. That's a good thing. All right. All right, you ready?
Yeah. Well, you don't know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, whatever I'm gonna say.
High five from the hip. I'm ready.
All right, well, let's go.